Welcome back to the channel, guys. I am the Ginger Gamer, and this is my review of God of War Ragnarok. I can say I've played a few games in my day. Probably more than a few. There are too many to recount, all or even some of them, and even then only a few really stick out. God of War Ragnarok is unlike anything I've experienced to date. I don't think a piece of entertainment, video games or otherwise, has been able to have this much depth, substance, and weight as God of War. From the rich history, the reboot sequel spin, unmatched graphical fidelity, best-in-class combat, and a compelling, overarching, complex narrative, video games don't get more polished than this. I was so invested in the story that I would put the controller down to watch the cutscenes, or wait until all the dialogue had stopped before I would move on to the next task. The story picks up from the previous game, having Kratos and his son completing their task, them returning home in the beginning of Fimbulwinter. Now they are trying to survive and stay out of the god-killing business entirely. The nuance and impact of most, if not all, conversations between almost the entire cast are nothing short of incredible. These writers need to write scripts for movies if they aren't already doing so. There is a lot to gush over on offer here, and more than 2 games worth. Many are calling it the greatest of all time, and I would be inclined to do so as well. No matter where you stand, this game demands others to be better. To Ragnarok or not to Ragnarok.
Ever do, ever. It's not enough. We can't hide forever.
We do not hide. We prepare for a fight for which we are not ready. We'll go.
The story is deep and evolving and incredibly interesting. There are lots of stories out there in movies and in games, but I have yet to play or experience anything that is of this caliber. The only other game I can think of that is on par is The Last of Us Part 1. Even then, there is a caveat in that the sheer wealth of content is astounding. The amount of dialogue that is on display here and the caliber of it is truly unmatched. The fact that so much of it could have been missed if you just barreled through the story makes me happy I took my time with it. My total time after credits was 65 hours. That includes a ton of side quests and exploration. I was able to fully invest in all the characters and thereby the story. So while those characters were pushed to their limits and beyond, I was fully engaged and couldn't wait to see what was next for them. I cared about them, and their fate mattered to me. Lots of games have interesting mechanics and incredible graphics, but mostly their stories fall flat and are uninteresting, or at the very least they lack intrigue and mystery. This game was able to have an out-of-this-world story that was still able to tell a very personal story that connected me on many levels. For me, it impacted me as a father, husband, and as a man. To watch Kratos and Atreus lose their connection and slowly build it back stronger than ever was pure magic. The whole time the game kept me in suspense as to if Ragnarok would come or not. The game's themes are thick with destiny and what it means to know your own destiny. Kratos, of course, has been down that road before, but not with his own blood in this way. He is not the same Spartan bent on revenge as he once was and does not want to start Ragnarok if he doesn't have to. This back and forth struggle with Kratos and Atreus, destiny, and their relationship is the backbone of this epic story. God of War 2018 was a fantastic game, and I think that Ragnarok takes everything about that game and turns the dial all the way up. While playing, I just kept thinking that everything feels better, looks better, is more responsive. Combos are more fluid, the details are sharper, the combat hits harder, and it's more dynamic. It's as if they took the original and leveled it all the way to the max. The Leviathan axe feels better than ever, however I must admit I was expecting to feel something more with the DualSense, given all the ways it has been incorporated into Sony's other first-party titles. The Blades of Chaos are more fun this time around, especially the scorpion-like move that's straight out from Mortal Kombat. There's a new weapon this time around, and boy, is it useful. The new weapon is a Spartan Spear. While it's cool and gives you new moveset and the ability to access new areas, I only used it sparingly. A big contention with the 2018 game was for many and myself a lack of enemy variety in the quality of the boss fights. I think now, knowing the development of the 2018 game was difficult, the fact that the 2018 God of War is what we got is a testament to how good Sony Santa Monica truly is. They completely reinvented a character in the most dramatic fashion and then succeeded in spades. The enemy variety are aplenty, and the ways to dispatch them are equally so. There are werewolves, ogres, dragons, drakes, Asgardians, elves, soul eaters, giant wisps, and of course Thor and Odin. The only enemies that I despised were the nightmare floating eyes, the little fire lizards, and the little gremlin-type monsters that buff other enemies. The combat is chunky and has a heft to it. I really like how everything I input seems to translate no matter the order. The combo system is easy to learn and fun to use and experiment with, especially the juggling system that's back in full force. The bosses are a highlight in Ragnarok. While Baldur in the first game was fun, and the highlight of course, there were also too many samey troll fights, and even the dragon fight wasn't as fun as I think it could have been. The Valkyries were interesting and difficult, but completely missable if you weren't a completionist. There's even a joke about some optional troll bosses in-game between Mimir and Kratos, about how they miss fighting trolls. There are a ton of new execution animations, and they are also varied based on enemy type and weapon you use. The quality is unparalleled, and I never really knew what was around the next corner, which makes for an exciting time. If you had a problem with the bosses before, you'll be in for a real treat.
You seem like a calm and reasonable person. Are you? A calm and reasonable person.
Thor, of course, is a highlight of the game, and he's not the MCU version. This is a menacing, murdering, belligerent take on the God of Thunder. The voice actor is incredible, honestly my favorite right behind Kratos. There was a palpable sense of dread building as the game went on, knowing it was foretold that Kratos would die, and if he was going to die, I just knew it would be at the end of Mjolnir. The first fight with Thor was epic. Knowing how the last game ended with Thor's two sons dead, I was certain of Thor's intention towards Kratos and his son. I was wrong. In that the Aesir lived for a glorious death, and his visit to Kratos was simply, don't kill any more gods and we won't have any more problem kind of deal. Of course, in Kratos fashion, he simply says, no. The fight is what you have seen in the trailers where Mjolnir and the Leviathan axe hit and come to a standstill. It really is epic and incredible example of how games allow you to really experience a spectacle that movies just can't match. Some of the game's highlights are from Thor as you are fighting him as Kratos. While you are using certain special moves, he mocks you as you are using them. It is incredibly immersive. It's not just him, all the characters, including your companions, all respond in real time to things that are currently or just have taken place, and even events that have happened in the past. It's all intriguing. There wasn't one bit of dialogue that I did not enjoy. It's all in the detail, and it's masterclass. One of my concerns with Ragnarok was that I knew we would be going back to realms that we explored in the first game. I thought there would be assets reused to the point where it wouldn't be as interesting to explore. Boy, was I wrong. While there are some reused assets and animations, the rest of the game, as far as I'm concerned, is brand new. This game's world has been handcrafted, arguably down to the blade of grass. Everything has its place, and it's all engaging and fun to explore. It's like a Metroidvania in that there are winding paths, hidden areas, and the secrets that require specific items to explore everything, all but guaranteeing you will come back for more. I spent so much time trying to find everything because I cared about what I was finding. Whether it was interesting or beneficial in areas can be accessed at any given time. All 9 realms are completely unique and different in the best ways. Specifically, all the realms you have already visited are going to feel completely new and warrant your time and attention. You have the frozen lake of Midgard that you previously trekked across in a boat with Atreus, to the brand new jungle-soaked realm of Valheim. The creativity on display here is why I play games. I've gone back and forth as whether I prefer wide-open worlds or sprawling maze-like worlds. I've concluded, for me at least, I just enjoy games where everything has a purpose. The most contentious part of the game by far is where you play as Atreus. There is no getting around this part of the game. For me, I will always prefer playing as Kratos in any God of War game, period. I, however, did not hate this part of the game as I feel it helps create a sense of absence for Kratos, similarly to how Atreus may be feeling. It makes the choices you make as Atreus have more weight, knowing that everything you do will need to be reckoned with when he is back with his father, and the tension that brings. His playstyle is much faster, and in general, it is much easier to play as him. However, I prefer the weighty, devastating type blows only Kratos can bring. Now, on the other hand, Atreus' rage attacks are incredibly fun as he turns into a wolf and begins to rip the heads off of his enemies. This is awesome, and it was my favorite thing about playing as him. Another huge surprise is the different team-ups in the Ragnarok. Not only do you play as your go-to boy and father, you are now also treated with Kratos and Freya, Kratos and Brock, but my favorite was Atreus and Thor, which was completely unexpected, and the dialogue between them was unnerving but also funny. The way Thor treats Atreus' most powerful attacks and makes them sound trivial was funny to me. I think maybe his playtime could have been cut down a little. It does not, however, leave me with an overall bad taste in my mouth. I think the pacing was good in the end and the story unfolded in a unique and satisfying fashion. To wrap up, Ragnarok has more epic moments than a month's worth of summer's blockbusters. The number of times my jaw dropped in the game is more than I can shake a stick at. Lots of games try to make you feel part of something epic, however, most, in my opinion, fail miserably. The problem is they also haven't fully immersed you in the story, and I think you can't have one without the other. During the moments when the music swells and emotions run high for Kratos and gang, I was right there with them. I highly recommend wearing a headset or listening with a good surround sound because this game demands and deserves both. Every scenario that is set up has a satisfying payoff by the end. From how they incorporate a young boy's loyal wolf into a giant realm-traveling behemoth, all the way to Kratos making amends with an enemy instead of giving them a taste of his axe. Each thread of the story is important and impacts the larger narrative in a meaningful way. This game more than lived up to the hype both created in the real world and within the story itself. I have to say I was fully satisfied with Ragnarok, and now that I have platinumed it, I don't regret a minute. So I highly recommend this game, especially if you like the games, any of the games, including the last one in 2018. That's my review. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment. Ginger out.
This feels familiar. What?